I'll start with my sob story, which is last episode, ladies and gentlemen, a little bit of an oopsie on my side. Last episode, I fucked something up, and I mixed together some timelines. So essentially, what's happened is I injured like my, I pulled my trap, shoulder, some muscles in my arm, and my pec. And it's been pretty rough, so I was completely like unable to get any sort of consistent sleep, because I would just keep on waking myself up with like muscle spasms and seizing up and all of that. So, and on top of that, work has kind of been mounting up because it's all the end of year stuff. So I was, pretty tired, pretty cramped for time, and just a little rushed on everything. And in my sleep deprived state, I mixed up some timelines related to the Ontario terror attack. That did not actually happen very recently. It happened June 6th, 2021, and the court proceedings are happening recently. Some essentially a white nationalist used a truck and killed a 46-year-old man, a 50 and 44 and 74-year-old woman, all in the same family, leaving behind a 9-year-old son. That's also something that I'd mixed up. I saw that they'd hit the man and then heard that, like, a man and then heard that the son had survived. I thought they were the same person. They were not. So I just had to get that straight. And one thing that particularly annoyed me about this was when I'm reading through all the articles in the different timelines, because I was going back, you see the victim's age staying the same, and you see the perpetrator's age getting older. And that was just kind of a bad feeling that I didn't really like. We did cover that it was inspired by white nationalism, and inspired by overseas events, and like Islamophobia. Some of it kind of grounded in reality, though not justified by it. And most of it is just the fact that there were some major events happening that certain spaces online have just proceeded to stew in. COVID helped him stew in it. And also that the attacker's intentions were specifically political. He left the house looking to kill Muslims that day, and that is what he did. So that's kind of the top up, getting the record straight on that story. So my bad for kind of miscovering that. I briefly talked about how I thought the segment was not great. I was pretty uncomfortable afterwards, but we decided, hey, we're not technically real journalists, so we'll just we'll just kind of go through it. But then I realized I actually kind of did at least appear to be covering that story seriously, like a journalist would. So if I'm going to do that, I should actually have, some responsibility to cover it properly. So moving on, what I'm kind of going to do is make sure to, one, I haven't been using social media before, so I messed up my timelines because I saw an article about the court case, looked it up, and found all the news articles that were older, missing the dates, and I thought, oh, everyone's talking about this. So I'm going to check social media to make sure everyone's talking about it, make sure to get all my times and dates right and all of that. I think that's kind of my plan. And I'm also just going to stick to what I'm better at, which is not being so serious.
Well, don't worry, folks. We did not learn our lesson. We put Spencer in charge of a very important story this week. So.
Oh, yeah. I made sure to hardly do research for an extremely important story with a lot of political backstory. Yeah. So we'll get there. Please email me for everything I've gotten wrong. There will certainly be a lot of it.
You have an email?
Yep. We have an email. Canada. theory.night.in.canada@gmail.com if you have questions, queries, complaints about individual members of this show. Feel free to name names. Feel free to bully, harass, whatever you want. It's, I don't check the email.
Yeah, I don't check. No one checks the email. Sherry didn't even know.
No one checks the email, so we don't care.
If you want to use it as a 10-minute email, go ahead.
Yeah, feel free to complain there. It'll get it off of your chest, and it sure as hell won't bother us.
Yeah.
And I will say, so 2 people brought this one up to me, and saying that, like, I kind of missed the mark on it. So, one, thank you for doing that. Otherwise, I probably would have just gone about my day thinking I kind of did a crummy job, but whatever. But it had me actually feeling pretty down, because I don't like to mess things up, especially things that are important. And I must say, I am very happy that when it came to messing something up, I did it before this week. Because boy, ladies and gentlemen, did someone mess up this week. We had Anthony Rota bringing a Nazi into the House of Commons and leading a standing ovation.
Now,
for
tell the folks
Nazi.
at home. Remind the folks at home who Rota is.
No.
Okay, so Rota is.
He's
Now
the
I
speaker,
watched.
isn't he? Yeah.
I watched this live. It was shocking. So Rota is an MP from North Bay, from Nipissing, and his main job in the House is he's the official speaker. So he's a non-partisan. He's officially a non-partisan in the role. He's a custodian of Parliament, more or less. He was voted in as a Liberal, but he's supposed to be a complete ally to everybody and equal to everybody. Now, I watched this live, and it was kind of awesome seeing him talking about how this man he's pointing at in the banisters fought against the Russians during World War II, and everyone.
What side fought against the Russians during World War II?
Yeah, it really makes you think about that. I don't know how anyone missed that. Ukrainians fighting against Russia. Huh.
Well, okay, to be fair, not every country fought against the Russians were Nazis. Like Poland, for example, fought against the Russians.
But one of them was.
He was in. Okay. The Ukrainians who like opposed the Soviet Union were not necessarily Nazis. But this man was a member of SS Galicia, which was a division of the SS, an infamous, extremely violent branch of the Nazi military that has been implicated in the deaths of thousands of civilians in Poland. This goes beyond this goes beyond this is beyond like getting a guy from the ROA, which is the organization that fought the Soviet Union but wasn't part of the SS in World War II. This is a guy who very likely participated in the Holocaust. This is SS Galicia.
Now, also, I think we did kind of brush over. I think Shrey was moving towards it. I'm not sure if it was your intention to go there. I love the non-partisan speaker just being like, oh yeah, this guy killed commies. Everybody clap. Everybody please clap now.
That was the most interesting thing, because if you look at social media right now, a ton of MPs, including the Prime Minister and so forth, are coming out saying that, listen, we didn't know. We're sorry.
Yeah, in the article I read about this, I did love this. I'll get a quote going. Trudeau and Zelensky honored this individual with cheers, salutes, and applause. Both Poilievre and Jagmeet Singh issued statements indicating that they were not aware of the history. I love how it's like putting Trudeau in the active role and Poilievre in the victim role there, despite the fact that they were both in the exact same position.
Now, Spencer, I've got a couple of images for you to edit in. Yeah. There is a famous memorial in Oakland, Ontario, that was erected by members of the Ukrainian immigrant community. All right, so this first image I'm sending you is the shoulder patch of SS Galicia, the SS division assembled in Ukraine that massacred Polish civilians in 1944. Okay, so this is the symbol right there. Please visually describe it for the audience.
It's a shield. Well, I guess they can see it. Do I need to visually describe it?
I guess you don't need to. But it's like a lion. It's got 3 crowns. It's very, it's very specific. It's not like this is just a shape. Like the SS logo is like a lightning bolt. This is an actual very specific heraldry.
Yeah.
Now, this is the monument in Oakland.
Oakville.
Or not Oakville.
Huh. Wait, I recognize that.
Yeah. This is one of the infamous monuments to the SS that have been erected in Canada. Canada has a very, very strange history especially with this particular military unit, which is SS Galicia, and honoring it in really awkward and strange ways.
Yeah, we let them into Canada, saying that they should not be they shouldn't be judged as a group. We need to do individualized screenings, and then kind of just didn't do much with it as far as I did, as far as I checked. They were just like, the war crimes never really substantiated, so, these guys might be okay.
The actual defense, the line in defense of having this Nazi at the Canadian Parliament was SS Galicia has never been officially convicted of any of the war crimes they were accused, and therefore we just need to, not bring it up when it comes up.
So this was actually a very troubling thing for the Canadian government back in the 80s when it was found out that about 600 of them were in Canada. And so there was an entire report done around these quote unquote Nazis, not quote unquote. In Canada.
Yeah, we don't even have to use modern day terms. It's literally just a Nazi.
Literally members of the Nazi Party.
Yeah, actively fought for.
It did lead to them finding out that they were killing Polish and Jewish civilians, but nothing really came out beyond what Bennett said about how they weren't officially committed or convicted of genociding anyone, so it's fine.
Yeah. These guys, look, some of the good ones, I guess. I'm shocked. People were sitting there just how did our official government of Canada checks and balances not work? I'm sitting here fucking panicking over a podcast that got 30 listens or something like that. And I'm sweating for 3 days and just trying to stress this shit. I could not imagine doing this.
Oh, there's so many calls for Anthony Rota to resign from the House, which I don't think it's ever happened historically that a speaker was forced to resign from their job in Parliament. I don't think he will. I think he'll survive this because this is such a specific topic, but such a niche topic. But it would be huge if he does.
Yeah. I don't Jewish really groups see how you get through this without resigning. This is just too egregious.
Yeah. This is insane. A bunch of international Jewish advocacy groups have complained formally to the Canadian government about this, including the Simon Wiesenthal Center, which is a charity we could cover, I guess not in a main episode, but it is an interesting organization. It's the official Nazi hunters organization. Mm-hmm. They do the finding Nazis in South America activities. Mm-hmm. They complained about the Canadian government doing this. I don't know. I feel like we might be approaching a reckoning where Canada might need to address the several monuments to the SS we have erected in this country that we should not have.
I wonder how it must have felt for Zelensky, because Zelensky is Jewish at the end of the day.
He's a Jewish Ukrainian, yeah.
Yeah. So I wonder how they reckon with this history, or the fact that he applauded an actual Nazi.
Well, from what I understand,
I don't think Zelensky this guy's day can get any worse at this point.
Zelensky's got a lot going on. I know he's been forced to compromise with the Ukrainian far right, despite, I assume, his reservations about collaborating with Nazis as a Jew. So I feel like he's probably made his peace with the fact that he has to work with the small group of Nazis that are present in Ukraine, because they need any number of bodies they can get to fight Russia. So I don't know if he's that disturbed by it.
I can't imagine going to Canada, which is in terms of excitement politically, we're probably about the lamest country out there. Spare maybe Finland or something. We're really
that's not true.
Okay, there's many countries lamer than that.
We're here because we decided we should try to actually cover all the exciting things that are happening. But frankly, politically, we're pretty dang tame overall.
No. Well, the reason why I disagree with that is because the main reason he came to Canada was that, and I know we talked about this previously, Canada's some of the highest number of Ukrainians in the world. I think we're number 3 after Russia and Ukraine itself.
Yeah,
There's
we
a
have a
huge-
long history with Ukrainians. They've been migrating here steadily since the 19th century. So
Yeah.
they're like a huge voting bloc.
He
So-
even mentioned that the first Holodomor statue in anywhere really in the world was in Edmonton.
Mhm.
And I mean, all the flip side of it also, the first Ukrainian Nazi statue was also in Edmonton. But but a huge
God, his
Ukrainian.
Yeah, man, like
population.
showing up to Canada and then the day that you show up, like, boom, Nazis in the house. Like, like can't get a break.
Oh man, the Russians must have had a field day with this one.
Oh yeah, this is like a present. This is just like wrapped, put
Yeah.
under the Christmas tree for them. And, like,
I did see-
you can't defend it.
Yeah, I, as far as I know, the only quote I saw was one member of the Russian Foreign Ministry was quoted being like, "See, the West are full of Nazis."
Yeah.
Like it's been their line since day one is like trying to justify their invasion by claiming they're engaging in like a denazification.
Mhm.
So this definitely does not help our case against them. You know what I mean?
Look, it's getting worse out there. That's
Yeah.
they need to start invading Canada too.
I hear there's ethnic Russians living in Nineveh that they could.
Ooh.
You know.
Denazify?
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Let's move on.
we're gonna get we're giving them too much here. I'll say that.
Since you said the Nazi word, this is being demonetized, right?
I don't know if
Maybe
we're even
not.
monetized to begin with.
Yeah,
No, that's
right.
One, we're never making it to the monetization with our content, or our view counts. Two, I think a lot of people have been covering this, and I think that might mean that like the Nazi word might be getting a break because it is a literal Nazi. Like I have a feeling this might get a break compared to regular news shit, just because, like, again, it's not referring to something modern as Nazi or Nazi-like or fascist or something like that. It literally is. It's right there. he's chilling in the house, and he's getting a standing ovation. Like it's
Pretty impressive to see Nazis still alive, though. Like, these guys 98. That's wild.
yeah.
It's been a while since they were kicking around. Okay, sure. You asked what did Zelensky think of that? I'm wondering what the Nazi was thinking of seeing Zelensky representing his country at the House of Commons.
At 98, are you still like, not to be rude to any of our 98-year-old listeners, but I imagine.
And we have many. The average age, the YouTube's demographics there, average listener is 102. So tread carefully.
Well, average, and bro, at least a few people are like 17, so we might have a couple people coming in and close to 182 right now.
So that is saying, tread carefully. Our main audience is retirement home residents, so
Yeah, people that have accidentally clicked on us while searching sex 18 in the search bar.
Apparently, yes.
It's interesting, right? Most of our audience do live in the Edmonton Oakville area for some reason.
Oh no!
Right?
Yeah, have we? Is this our
the
target
iconic
market?
Edmonton Oakville corridor?
It looks like we're appealing to a completely different group than we'd originally anticipated.
Yeah.
But yeah, like at 92, are you still really, how much are you thinking when you're in a crowded place with tons of people and like a lot of sound happening? I figure at 92, if I'm
98.
still kicking in there and not completely lost it, which I imagine I will be when I end up there, like that's a lot going on. I need to sit down. My knees hurt, my back hurts. I assume after the events of the last couple weeks, my shoulder is going to hurt at 92.
98.
Oh, 90. Jesus.
The other part which is interesting is, I mean, we talked about this like again and again about the large number of Ukrainians, but even like when the Russians were talking about denazification, right? Mm-hmm. Our deputy prime minister and minister of finance, who is, by the way, one of the few cool people left in the political world in the world, not just in Canada, but her grandfather was famously a pro-Nazi. gentlemen who worked on newspapers and journalism within Ukraine at the time.
Okay.
Right. And so she was pointed out as like, look, they're filled with Nazis. Look at her right there.
So, in terms of racial classification, two sisters have recently caught a charge for gaming it. Pair of sisters, Amira and Nadia Gill, the Gill sisters, have finally been charged with fraud by the Iqaluit branch of the RCMP after the case against them has been building for the past few months. So, if you aren't aware of this case, it's two Kingston, Ontario residents and their mom, Karima Manji, who have been charged with fraud for pretending to be Inuit in order to scam various charitable organizations to acquire funds earmarked for Inuit entrepreneurs. So some of the afflicted organizations include the Kavakak Association and the Kikiktani Inuit Association, and famously the indigenous charity Inspire. So they used the money to start their indigenous-themed art business, which they claimed was inspired by the residential schools news that was in the that dominated the cycle for a few months in the past couple of years. So they actually are not Inuit; they are ethnically Indian from India, not the other type. And there's a lot of weird stuff in this story. For one, they claim to have been the adopted daughters of their biological mom, Karima Manji. They claim that they were the actual daughters of a real Inuit woman, just a random Inuit woman living in Iqaluit called Kitty Noah, who they had never met. Because in order to acquire these grants, they needed to be registered as like status Inuit. So they needed a mother who was Inuit, and I don't know how they even heard of this woman, but they chose this woman, Kitty Noah. Kitty Noah found out about it when she saw of them on some list of charity recipients, and she complained to the various charities, which blew the whole case open. Kitty Noah notably says she has never given up children to the government for adoption, and she just never met the Gill family, and she does not know how they heard of her. One of the charities involved, Inspire, gave a loan to the girls, which they wanted paid back. The girls have not paid it back. And the girls also promised to donate proceeds from their business to Inspire, which they also did not do. So I believe they have been charged with fraud and I think they're going to be fined at least $5,000. I don't think they'll face prison time, but
a whole $5,000? No way.
Yes.
How are they ever going to recover from this?
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on this case? This case isn't really like that. I wouldn't say this is like thrilling news. It is just funny. It is objectively a funny thing that happened.
This is one of those news stories that always cheeses me. Because it's like, stop proving them right, you know? All the haters out there.
Proving who
just
right?
Like, everybody's faking all of this shit to get like all the like fake indigenous people claiming that to get into universities and all of that. This is just one of those cases where it's like a couple scammers go out there, prove all of those types right, and then just dip. And that always cheeses me, I gotta say. That's kind of one of my two main takeaways from this.
Well, it's kind of a tough situation. Like, in terms of stopping, I guess, fake Inuit people from claiming to be Inuit, how would you go about doing that? Like, they have to provide some sort of, like, blood test to establish ancestry or something? It kind of runs into issues with tribe sovereignty, because who's a member of, like, the tribe is up to the tribe, right? Yeah. It's kind of difficult for us to formalize a process for being, like, genetically this person qualifies as an Inuit.
Yeah, that's had some interesting developments historically, proving to be genetically. What point are you genetically this type enough?
Yeah.
And I
There's a
think also
huge
just
movement.
like Canada, it's hard for Canada to be extremely strict on this because it's like if you need to prove that you're, depending how strictly you need to prove that you're Indigenous, is just another tough spot to be in that you'll also have probably trouble with.
Well, there's a huge movement, or there has been not too long ago, where a lot of academics are coming out as, or not coming out, but being found or discovered not to be truly Indigenous or having very, very little Indigenous heritage, but claiming to be Indigenous in order to get certain rights, for example, or certain privileges.
Yeah.
It's interesting where, and I think Ben and I were talking about this before, like just before this episode, where previously there was a disincentive to be Indigenous,
Yeah.
and now it's becoming more and more fruitful for people to scam the system, pretend they're Indigenous,
Yeah.
and so it's just getting worse and worse. For unfortunately, this might change it because they might make an example out of it. Though for $5,000, it's a bit low to make an example out of them. I do know that there was other things which happened to them. Like I know some they lost their jobs, for example. I know one of them at least was a lawyer who was pretty proudly showing their on the legal company's website, and they've been since removed and so forth. So there is other
I
parts.
feel like the main penalty here is the reputational damage, and this is like nowadays if you get busted in a high profile fraud case like this, these girls probably can't get jobs can't get VC capital in the future, right? They're kind of like they're barred from the entrepreneur space for life now, basically, right? I feel like that's the main punishment.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Though I think one of them was a civil engineer, the other went into law, was it?
I believe so. Yeah.
And that's like, two places where you can still probably get a job after a couple of years and this cools down or something. Unless it gets revoked, which could happen. But I'm going to make a case here that I think was right, which is, the parents were in, like the mother was in on the scam, was it?
Yeah.
Look, if your parent's a scammer and you're a kid, you come out as a scammer, like, you should just be immune to anything scam related until you have a career set up. You're gonna be a scammer. It is what it is.
So you think it should be legal for these girls to commit fraud?
I don't think it should be legal, but I'm just gonna make a soft case for it. Young kids who are scammers when their parents are scammers. I don't think we're set up with a good hand of cards to play things right.
I also, just part of the story, now I do want to say that Queen's keeps winning. These two people were from Queen's University.
Yep.
Yeah.
Queen's not known for its racial controversies or anything like that.
I think this is one of the first ones in recent times.
Yeah, I think this is the first time there's been a case of a Queen student getting in trouble for offensively pretending to be another race.
Yeah.
It's at least the first time in the last couple weeks. So Queen's doing all right for itself.
Like we know there's a very good chance we know someone who knows them. Like I know at least one person who knows them because they worked at Red Sox, and one of the girls worked at Red Sox at the time. Apparently she was very cocky then and kept talking about all the money she was getting.
Look, we're gonna try to get a sponsorship deal from all that money, and probably try to get a guest on the show. And maybe we'll get the inside scoop of the scammers. Maybe we'll get their way out of it. We'll be the first ones to give their side of the story. Bail them out, as they should be, for just being, thirsty young hustlers.
One of the final pieces I want to say on this story is shout out to their brother of the twins, Liam, who when asked to comment on the story, said, "I'm not close to my family. I don't really like them. I do not consider myself Indigenous in any way."
I can't imagine having to put out a statement like that.
Well, this guy probably is estranged from his family because they're a bunch of hucksters, right? Who have been made his life hell since he was a kid. Yeah, I feel for that guy.
He's a real one. He's in the UK.
Well, one thing that is curious to me is the Iqaluit RCMP is handling the case instead of, like, I don't know, the Ontario branch or something where they actually committed the crime.
I'm assuming it's because some of the money came from the government Nunavut, if I'm hearing correctly, right? Like some of the Inuit organizations.
Yeah,
and so I'm assuming, yeah, they probably were the ones who claimed or who asked for the fraud to be investigated.
Yeah, I guess if it has government like money from there, it makes sense to get there involved, like the logical extension of it.
They probably just call their local police, right?
Yeah. And one last tidbit about this story: Kitty Noah, kind of a secondary victim of this case, does have a actual son that she did not surrender to the government, and his name is Noah. So
that's crazy. That goes hard. Shout out Noah.
Yeah, shout out to Noah.
All right. Well, thinking of feeling for people, ladies and gentlemen, after butchering a story last week, I'm back for round 2. Where here I am all prepped to butcher the story of some of the history of the Canada and India controversy and the Khalistan movement and all of that. So I'm going to give a abridged, maybe another abridged version of some little tidbits of the Khalistan movement. This is simplified to the point of near absurdity. But I figure there is some history, so I'm just going to give you guys some history, and if you're interested in it, then you'll have some stuff to look up for yourself. This is something where you'd probably need a PhD to properly approach anything. Every single article I was reading, no one can say anything with convictions. It is always, this group was then accused of doing this, no more follow-up. Each side is always accusing each side, and it's just about impossible to say anything. So the Khalistan movement has kind of a little bit of a root in colonialism, or a little bit. It has a solid root in colonialism. Whereas India was colonized, is it Sikhs or Sikhs?
Sikh.
Sikhs got kind of locked into agriculture and felt that they were on an uneven side, or the bad side of uneven development. And Jarnel Bhindranwale was a notable leader in the movement, or at least adjacent with the movement, but a notable figurehead nonetheless. Now, I'll put a picture in here, but you might notice looks a little bit like Trudeau. That's not coming from me, but word on the street, all right? He looks a little bit like Trudeau. Bhindranwale, you said?
Bhindranwale. Basically, Wala means from there,
Okay.
and so Bhindranwale means from Bhindra.
Bhindranwale. Deal with me.
Yeah.
So he kind of was a more militant leader, which is something that historically used to be much more common, but doesn't happen so much these days. Gave a list of demands for increased autonomy and political rights for Sikhs, and took the Golden... it was rejected. So he took the Golden Temple, fortified it, and that place essentially became a war zone. Extremely messy. That's all I'm going to say on that part. If I go any further, my life is on the line.
Now, is this the Blue Star Massacre you're talking about now?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, Operation Blue Star.
So for time frame, this was like the late 20th century. This is
1984.
This is post-colonial at this point in the story. I don't know. That wasn't clear, but this is before British colonization of India. There was an independent Sikh state in Punjab, the Sikh Empire, that ceased to exist when the British invaded India. and was not recreated during the partition, which is kind of like the core of this issue.
Yeah, a huge part of this issue just goes back to the partition.
Yeah.
But, I mean, technically anything that happened in India.
Especially since the partition divided the Sikh Empire's core territory, halfway down the middle. So part of historical, I guess, Khalistan as a nation is on the other side of the border from India.
Yeah, Punjab means 5 rivers. Or land of 5 rivers, Punj 5 land. And if I remember correctly, 3 of the rivers are in Pakistan and cannot be accessed by India, and then 2 of the rivers are in the Indian Punjab. So it's very, very separated.
Yeah.
So, and other notable moments in history was when Sikhs were rumored to have killed Indira Gandhi, the prime minister.
Not rumored. That was confirmed to have killed Indira Gandhi.
Okay,
it was her Sikh bodyguards.
Okay, so I'm not saying confirmed. I'm terrified of this story.
I think Sikhs acknowledge that it was 2 Sikh men who killed Indira Gandhi.
Okay, sounds good. So that happened. Indira Gandhi famously just widely regarded as normal. Nothing interesting there.
Interesting take on Indira Gandhi, I have to say.
And then
this really is a bridge.
So that
I feel like Spencer might be on one side of this debate.
Okay, so that happened. There were a bunch of anti-Sikh riots everywhere, and at a minimum, thousands died. The number of people dying, large bars on that graph, I'm gonna say. And
around this issue is hilarious.
I'm sweating right now, man. There's a lot of pressure from certain groups to call it a genocide, not getting called a genocide. And there's one more thing, which is kind of a tie to Canada, which has connections to the current moment, which was terrorist attack for Flight 182 in 1985. This killed many Canadians, and I'm gonna leave it there.
This is our viewers actually have probably heard of this. This is the Air India bombing. This is probably the most famous terrorist attack in Canadian history.
Yeah.
It was pretty bad. Notably, the two men charged with it, the 2 men charged with orchestrating it, they were acquitted because it could never actually be proved it was them. Now, the reason why we're discussing this is because a prominent Khalistan separatist activist in British Columbia was killed under suspicious circumstances by 2 masked gunmen after CSIS had reached out to him to warn him about threats to his safety. This is actually the second time this has happened in a year.
Is it second or third?
Oh, yes, you're right, it is. Is it third? I thought it was second.
Okay,
second.
I may have a wrong time frame. I thought there was one suspicious event in, was it the UK, and another in, I think, Pakistan?
Oh, okay, yeah.
No. We're not talking about the Sikhs doing stuff. We're talking about Sikh Canadians being killed suspiciously. So in late 2020... In late 2022, Ripudaman Singh Malik, who was one of the men accused of orchestrating the Air India bombing, was killed under suspicious circumstances in a possibly targeted shooting by masked gunmen who were never caught. So this is the second time a semi-famous Khalistani separatist has died under this exact set of circumstances in Canada in a year. So tensions are high between the Sikh diaspora here and the Indian government.
Mm-hmm. Now, look, what was the guy's name again?
Harjeet Singh.
The guy. Yeah, sorry,
guy
can you use Poilievra's pronunciation?
Oh, yes. I don't know, people might not be aware of this, but Pierre Poilievre brought this up in Parliament, and he called Hardeep Singh the N-word.
Yeah, and here's the thing:
just hard R.
There's no real reason he had to do that. So this is my theory, was that they wrote down the name and tried to make it like they probably used a different spelling to make it more easily pronounceable for a quirked up white boy, and in doing so accidentally made it so that he misread it as the N-word. That's my theory.
You think
so
his
far.
own staff? You think his own staffers fucked it up for him?
I think this is just tough to say. Maybe it was staffers, maybe it was him. Maybe he just mispronounced J's as G's instead of the other way around. I'll never know what was going on in his brain in the moments leading up to that. But yeah, this does stand out to me because I've seen like cases of a streamer or something saying the N-word, or at least something that sounds very like the N-word when they're putting two things together, and then they get like banned for it and stuff like that. This was a case where it didn't even need to happen.
Yeah. It was just a goof. It was just a gaffe. I will not be holding this against Poilievre in the long run. It is just funny. I don't think he intentionally dropped an N-bomb in Parliament.
Yeah.
But
it would be, though, like... I guess I wouldn't believe it because this would not be, like I said, a good enough opportunity to get away with it. This is just outside of the realm of this is like a pure accident. Like, something went wrong. I don't think it was... Yeah.
Well, anyways, that's a really minor part of this really important story, which is the tension between Canada and India that has arisen because of this. Now, we talked about 2 Sikhs have been potentially allegedly assassinated in Canada over the past year. It should be noted that Sikh terrorist groups have also allegedly committed attacks in India.
I want to talk a little bit about the misinformation going on around that piece, where some of basically the gentleman who was assassinated, Nijjar, he was accused of bombing I believe it was a cinema in Punjab.
Yes, the 2007 Punjabi cinema bombing that killed 6, injured 40. He was not accused of doing it; he was wanted in connection to it, and the Indian government offered $150,000 US equivalent in reward for his capture, or information leading to his capture.
They put information out on Interpol, and they put in alerts on Interpol, which, by the way, any country can just throw something on Interpol and it'll just be an Interpol thing. Like, Russia's famous for throwing people on Interpol for the sake of throwing people on Interpol. Doesn't mean that they're accused
just to fuck up their day when they go to the airport.
Exactly. The Nijjar was
could I
throwing
just
Interpol.
put Bennett's name on there?
You're not a contributor to Interpol, so you'd have to become a sovereign state, a member of Interpol, and then you could do it.
All right.
And so with Nijjar, the RCMP did investigate him and did try to go through everything with him and confirm that they don't have any proof that he was connected with the movement in India or the bombing in India.
Right. It's an unsubstantiated allegation. He's also been accused of connections with Khalistan Tiger Force, which is a terrorist association that violently pursues Khalistani independence. I believe what India accused him of was not only being a member of KTF, but also having a compound to train KTF members in British Columbia. They claim that like he was orchestrating the training and equipment and like return of KTF members to and from India. That is a wild accusation. I don't know if there was ever any proof of that either.
No, like the RCMP just couldn't find proof of this all happening.
Look, if the RCMP can't manufacture proof, you know it's a rough allegation. Well, I've seen a lot of people who are just like, "Oh, Canada is the #1 terrorist refuge," and I'm like, that's like an oddball claim.
Well, it's really making the news around India, and India's like the hatred towards Canada is at an obscene level right now. It's fascinating. So the history of Indians in Canada mainly is around Sikh people, mainly for 2 reasons or at least as far as I know, 2 big reasons. One is that Sikhs were more likely to be in the military, and so when the British were parading them around the world, keeping things under control, they met Canadians in Hong Kong, and that convinced them to move over. And then 2, generally speaking, Hindus at the time We did not like people who eat beef at all, and would not get close to anyone who could eat beef. So we would never be able to survive outside of India, which led to a lot of Sikhs moving to Canada as a predominant force. And this eventually led to a larger and larger Sikh population, which during the 1984 debacle, to put it lightly, or the abridged version, as Spencer said, things happened.
Literally 1984.
Literally 1984. A lot of refugee claimants came to Canada through that, and they were mainly Sikhs, because it was mainly Sikhs being targeted at the time. And so there's a huge Sikh population within Canada, which has only been exasperated by the fact that as the Canadian government is very lenient on immigration compared to other countries, it's very easy to immigrate here comparatively. And so all that to say, there's a very, very strong diaspora population and a very strong and Sikhs themselves are a very organized community. So they own about 2% of the population is Sikh, if I remember my numbers correctly. Mm-hmm. That said, if you look at the ministers within the Canadian government, there's more ministers who are Sikh in the Canadian government than there are in the Indian government. And so they have a much more powerful position here.
Yeah, they have a pretty large voting bloc. They're pretty well politically organized. I will note, though, that I think it's very important to say Canadian Sikhs in general not only don't support militant Khalistani separatism, they don't support Khalistani separatism at all.
Yep.
So I looked at a study by TSAS. They interviewed Sikhs across Canada, their opinion on Khalistan. Overwhelmingly, Canadian Sikhs oppose Khalistani separatism, wish that it was discussed less at temples, do not like how prominent apologism is for the Air Canada or the Air India bombings, which I didn't know was even a thing.
Yep.
Of the people they interviewed, it was 80% opposed Khalistan independence.
I mean, every
20% supported.
Growing up, every time going to the Gurdwara, there's always, and I highly recommend taking a look, there's a huge Khalistani presence and a lot of pictures of militants and those who were involved with the violence, whether usually on the side of the Sikhs in this situation.
Yeah, and I imagine it has something to do with the fact that Khalistani separatism, because the Sikhs are kind of like almost an ethno-religious group. Like it's like like an Israel situation where this is like a religiously motivated separatistic thing. I imagine the more devout... I imagine there's like a correlation between devoutness of Sikhism and support for Khalistan, with like the more extremely religious members of the Sikh community being more likely to support it, which would explain why it has such a disproportionate presence in the community, and why it's like so present at temples, even though the majority of Sikhs don't support it.
What I find really fascinating, and I hate to see this happening as a staunch patriot, but what I find fascinating is the reactionary movement the various Hindu groups have taken and non-Sikh Indians have taken to this entire position, leading to a lot of the rise of more fascistic speakings in terms at Hindu temples in response to the Sikh revolutionaries.
In Canada or in India?
Oh, in Canada, definitely in Canada. There's been a huge movement and a huge uproar within the Canadian Hindu population in reaction, and to the point where it's becoming scarily close to Modi's speeches, who's already very, very close to fascism. Though, fun fact, as an aside, Modi has confirmed that the Sikh genocide was a real thing. Or not the genocide, but the Sikh killings were a real thing. And he wishes the Indian government at the time did not do it, for what it's worth.
Well, props to Modi.
His main argument was that he's from the BJP. The party that was killing all the Sikhs was Congress. So he actually blamed...
INC. This is just partisan beef then. This is like when Republicans are like, well, the Confederates were actually Democrats.
Yeah, exactly. The killers were Congress.
Yeah.
So I got a couple extra points to add. One is just about diaspora. I see a lot of people who are just like, oh, if they want something in India, then why the hell are they here to advocate for something in India? And it's like diaspora, I guess it's kind of like You know that like meme where there's the dumb guy, the like smarter person in the middle, and like the hooded, extremely smart figure on the
Mhm.
side? It's like just does not like foreigners, therefore they should leave. And then we have the like the where just most people are like diaspora is pretty normal under like a Western capitalist morals. Diaspora is just fine. And then you can go on to the next part where it's just like reject liberal slash leftist universalism. Not everyone needs to become like a homogenous mixture of everything. Not everything needs to be like overly positive for consumerism kind of thing in there. But I've seen an absolute ton of people just doing the whole why are they here advocating for things somewhere else? Like that's pretty normal. I don't
I
really.
don't know. I personally am one of those guys who's like stop talking about outside when our own internal problems are too bad.
Yeah.
But my take on that is due to the high amounts of foreign media, I feel like Canadian issues get thrown under the bus because of it. And it's not just diaspora, but everybody, I feel, does. I mean, that's part of this. The reason for this podcast is no one talks about Canadian issues.
Yeah.
So I see diasporas talking about foreign politics in the same vein, as
Yeah.
too busy focusing on the foreign issues instead of current local issues.
Every
Well, the
Canadian
thing with
lives
the
in
sick
constant
diaspora
rejection of
is
their
that-
own American diaspora.
The thing with the Sikh diaspora, though, is the reason they're here in no small part is because they were forced out. It's not like they oh, we want to be Canadians. They're like, we have nowhere else. This is
Well-
like where we need to go now. You know?
Well, I mean,
Uh,
most of the six came way after that. Most of the six came recently, right? Due to the easier immigration.
Okay.
A lot, like some six did definitely come as refugees during '84, but most six came recently, and there's a huge, significant number of six before '84 as well, just generally coming here again because of soldiers and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like warrants discussion, like why the Canadian government has been so antagonistic to India over this, and I think the answer is it might actually be true. That might be one root cause of this. I know, Stray, you said the CIA might have told us about this or something like that. CSIS was aware that this guy's life was under threat, so it might just literally be true. There's no discounting that. But the other thing is that the Khalistan movement has an outsized influence on Sikh political organization, and Sikh political organization itself has an outsized influence on party politics in this country, right? So, like, the government has to do it.
Well,
Because-
the NDP leader was like very, very pro Khalistan for a while. I'm not sure if he is publicly anymore, but I know back in the day he was.
Yeah, so like the government's hand is kind of forced because it's like an expression of the fact that Canada has all these weird internal ethnic voting blocks that all are very nationalistic for their old country still, like the Ukrainian voting bloc, the Sikh voting bloc, that kind of thing.
I have enjoyed the reactionary anti-Trudeau people. While Bennett was reading research papers, I was in the trenches, scavenging through the YouTube comment section, as I do so often. And I absolutely love how everyone is simultaneously pissed off at everything Trudeau theoretically knows, and is also pissed off at everything that Trudeau has not released yet, and therefore might not know. They're just frothing at the mouth over everything. They want, there's no kind of concept of time. They're living exclusively in the now, where the situation has happened, therefore the situation must be over. They want every single answer as of yesterday.
That's the other thing I want to bring up with this, which I hate so much. So Prime Minister Trudeau was not supposed to release information about the entire situation, right? He wasn't supposed to make the allegations this quickly. He was supposed to take time with this and really make sure our allies understood what was going on so that we could make a proper proclamation when the time is right. However, unfortunately for the Canadian government, who's trying to do geopolitics correctly, the Globe and Mail found out about this issue,
Journalists.
Can you imagine that a journalist from the Globe and Mail threatened the Prime Minister's office saying, "Hey, we're going to release this information," and the Prime Minister's office, please, for the love of God, please give us 1 week so we can at least get our allies on board. And they're like, "No, we'll give you 24 hours."
Oh my God, bruh.
So whenever someone complains about like a country arresting journalists and stuff like that, look, sometimes they deserve it. All right, God damn, this whole thing could have been avoided with just the simple arrest of one journalist.
Like, this entire situation could have been so properly planned. We could have let the information come out. We could have really thrown egg on Modi's face.
Mm-hmm.
But because one journalist
plan.
But because one journalist wanted clicks, he said no.
Yeah. Yeah, journalists constantly need to be, like, starting drama. It's not even breaking news being productive. They desperately crave the drama. They need the gotcha. And they can't do anything but, which seriously limits any integrity of not only the journalist, but also the government. Because, yeah, you could have something really good, and then it all just gets fucked up by someone who, yeah, just wants their clicks.
This man literally changed geopolitics for the near future just to get clicks.
I do like there have been allegations, I don't know if they're substantiated, that the CIA provided this information to us. That's how we've caught wind of it, of India potentially assassinating this guy. But the United States' public position on the issue has been very lukewarm, where I believe the strongest wording they've said was India should cooperate with Canada in solving this issue. Now, I know recently the Biden administration has been working to normalize relations with India and set up in like an anti-China pact in South Asia. So I imagine if it's true that the CIA leaked information to CSIS, I don't think the Biden administration wanted them to, because that kind of does jeopardize the West's relationship with India. So I guess there's kind of like this disconnect between, not even between branches of the U.S. government, but within the executive branch, between the CIA and like the cabinet.
Now I have something for you. This is one incredibly useful hero from the YouTube comment section who has asked a question that I think we could answer. Instead of accusing each other, why not settle it peacefully?
So true. That reminds me of like that reminds me of that fucking Reddit comment that's like, why don't the proletariat and the bourgeoisie simply join forces?
Exactly. They could get so much done. When you're playing a game of basketball, imagine how many more points they could score if both teams work together.
Well,
luckily, Indian politicians have responded to Canada's accusation with at least one alleged politician allegedly threatening to nuke Canada.
Okay, so I did do a deeper dive. He was not a politician. He was a professor.
Okay.
He was an academic who came out and said we should nuke Canada.
Honestly,
but luckily, I believe he saw a YouTube comment saying that maybe things should happen peacefully.
So he's calmed down now, of course.
Yeah, he's calmed down after he saw that guy's YouTube comment.
Well, honestly, I appreciate the threats, because how long has it been since Canada has been threatened to be nuked? Usually everyone don't they just say the states and then we're just kind of an afterthought?
Wait, in the last 2 weeks, we've got this entire threat and fight with India, and we got the Nazi in Parliament and the Russians being fun of us. Canada's like totally back in the foreign policy world.
Yeah, look, it's never been better.
Wasn't that Trudeau's promise in 2015? Canada's back.
Yep, and we're so back.
It's real, ladies and gentlemen.
We've never been more back. Now,
thinking of back, the land in the Greenbelt.
Yeah,
It's
let's cover another recurring story on this podcast. We've covered it probably 3 or 4 times now. Shrey, tell us about the Las Vegas Greenbelt Phoenix Kiss maelstrom.
So I want to start off with Spencer's right. The Greenbelt is back. The premier has confirmed the Greenbelt is going to be fixed. It was never going to be swapped out. Land is back, and he says sorry for the entire thing from happening. So the Greenbelt is whole once again and will not be touched by this current government, according to the premier.
No
Now,
more scandal, no more development. We are left with only mob ties.
So part of this entire situation happened because one of the ministers, Minister of Business and Digital Services, I believe it's called, Public and Digital Services. Basically, when you want to do anything online with the government, he's a minister in charge of it. Minister Khalid Rashid from Mississauga East, Cooksville.
Tariq Nasheed?
Khalid.
Oh, okay. Keep going.
Minister Tariq Nasheed. God damn.
Look,
please don't
put that guy. They can put that guy in charge of
notably
Ontario's
uncontroversial figure. Also, Tariq Nasheed.
I'm running on a platform for prime minister. My cabinet will consist of 2 people: me as prime minister, Tariq Nasheed as head of the National Film Board. Let's get to work.
Look, all films are gonna be awful. Films will exclusively be full of scenes of like black boys twerking. Every film will have at least 3 mandated scenes.
Anyway, let's get back on topic.
We should release a reaction of us watching that and explaining everything in detail.
Well, if we get to 1,000 subscribers, we'll do a buck breaking live stream.
Okay, now I'm just gonna get 1,000 bots. I need to do that.
Look, dude, we figured it out. We figured out how to make our podcast popular. We'll just have. We need to start
incentivizing subscriptions. At 1K subscriptions, we do the buck breaking live stream. 10K subscriptions, we release Spencer's address to the public, and the game begins to replace him. I don't know. I think we'll have to come up once we reach 10K and we have the new third host. We'll have to come up with 100K incentive as well.
100K, I get assassinated and replaced.
Yeah. And with 100K, we antagonize the Indian government into assassinating us.
I finally don't censor the part where I dox myself or activities that I've done with my friends recently.
Right, at 25 subscribers, we're gonna put Ben on Interpol.
We're gonna hack the no-fly list and add ourselves to it instead of like downloading it.
We're gonna make sure that we never have the opportunity to do an American live show. That way, we're forced to stay Canadian.
Yeah.
So back to Minister Rashid. So a couple of years ago, his back I think it was in 2019, he went to Las Vegas, right? And while in Las Vegas, he happened to bump into a property developer from Markham, Ontario. And
that's crazy. What a coincidence. Small world.
And it turns out that his wife was actually working for that property developer. Just like a huge coincidence. They're all
they must work out together. Someone, I don't know.
Yeah.
Same gym.
And so that was and so he's like, there was nothing shady happening. That was it. We just happened to be in Las Vegas. You know, whatever happens in Vegas happens Vegas. Am I right?
Yeah. Infamously clean, not mobbed up city, Las Vegas, Nevada. That's where he was.
A few years later, after an investigation by, I think it was CTV actually, they talked to 3 hotel employees. And they confirmed that the minister, one of the housing experts in the premier's government, and the property developer were caught doing manicures, pedicures, and massages together. In Las Vegas.
Look,
I'm sorry. Manicures, pedicures, and massages.
Yeah.
Okay. Either these are the 3 like gayest men in the mafia, or they were actually seeing prostitutes or something. There's no way.
Well, that's the other thing, is that the entire thing was reimbursed through cash only.
Yeah.
and they don't have any
Of course it was.
Now,
history.
I had more little meetings or whatever going on. This is from a completely non-reputable news source. Let me say that I didn't get a single decent news source while researching this story, and they were talking about how there were meetings that were lunches, golf, and going to a Raptors game. So
That's
on
the
top
other
of like
situation.
massages, manicures, pedicures. Well, when rich people are like, "Oh, we were working, we were in all these meetings," this is what they do.
So, as soon as this news broke out, Minister Rashid has been forced to. He resigned of his own volition. I like to say that he got resigned,
Yeah.
and he's also officially left the party to figure it out and see what's up. The other situation around this is the issue of what Spencer was alluding to of Mr. X and Phoenix Kiss. So these are two very separate characters from the Khalid Rashid situation, the property developer, where one of the people who owns part of the Greenbelt land, which got swapped in, paid a gentleman by the name of Mr. X, who was later found out to be a guy named John Mutton, who was a former mayor of Clarington, Ontario.
Mhm.
And former Mayor Mutton was basically given money to work with the government and convince them illegally to switch over to land. And when I say illegally, it's because he was not a registered lobbyist. He was just a lobbyist of his own volition. And he was reportedly going to be given $1 million if he's successful in getting the government to not only swap the land, but also give the land for development so they can build buildings on that land.
Now, a couple quotes from John Mutton. If she says I kicked her, I kicked her. Referring to the bruises on his wife.
God damn.
Also, referring to his daughter, I don't know how my fist ended up in her stomach.
What?
So, there's some added backstory on the fella.
So
Wait,
Mr.
Phoenix
Mutton was
said this?
No,
this
Mr.
is
Mutton.
John
Mr. Mutton.
So Mr. Mutton was accused of abusing his wife back in the day in 2006, I believe.
I don't remember.
Basically, yeah, he was accused of abusing his wife, his daughter. He was accused of being drunk constantly. This was during his re-election campaign to be mayor.
Mhm.
And so this is a character who was caught giving money or illegally giving Raptor games and tickets to things to the Conservative government in Ontario.
Mm-hmm. A very stand-up
Yeah.
figure, I will say. He is a bodybuilder. His physique was, for an amateur bodybuilder, like, fine. It wasn't notably bad, but it also isn't notably, like, incredibly good. Did some competitions, don't really know how they went. I just looked at his physique and judged him based off of that. I think I already kind of knew what I needed to know about this character going in, so, yeah.
It's just so funny how every development of this story gets more and more mafia core, like more and more mobbed up, more and more organized crime. In a sense, I guess it's an improvement for the Ford family because this is like sophisticated mafia stuff, whereas the brother Rob was more of like a kind of a street level crack cocaine kind of guy.
Yeah.
And than pool parties in Las Vegas kind of guy.
He was like the independent contractor of mobs. Now we're up to real industry style. But yeah, Phoenix Kiss, his picture is legendary.
Phoenix Kiss has a bomb picture.
I'm convinced Phoenix Kiss is not a real person because I can't find anything about the man except for his one picture on the website.
Dan, you can't find anything about the most mobbed up man in history? I wonder why. Now, this guy looks
He's He's been removed from the website for what it's worth.
Really?
Yeah.
That's suspicious. If he wasn't real, he wouldn't be removed from the website. He would be kept there. It would be perfect. It's like a get out of the jail free card to put someone fake as the accusation. Yeah, huge cigar. Was it a pinky ring or was it somewhere just enough?
He's got a giant. Okay, so he's got a giant cigar. Let me describe this picture for you all. Okay,
They can see the
he's looking like he's looking smug at you. He's got like a Freemason ring on his ring finger. It's like actually got like the Freemason symbol on it. That's not like a joke. He's wearing kind of like an Italian cut suit with like a vest under it. big handkerchief sticking out the pocket, giant cigar between the fingers. He looks so smug, so bald. He looks like he was cast to play Kingpin in like a Spider-Man or Daredevil adaptation. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, he looks straight out of the Daredevil season 1. What's the bad guy's name?
Kingpin.
It's just Kingpin.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I pranked myself. Good job, Bennett, for getting the name right the first time.
Listen, I'm our official comic book correspondent.
Yeah.
All right. I think we've covered the Greenbelt scandal adequately.
One last
Once
tidbit.
again.
Mr. X, the John Mutton character, has a picture with Poilievre where he's excited about Poilievre running because he's going to be cutting all that red tape for developers right in the middle of his fixing scandal. I almost said match fixing. That's not right. But yeah, right in the middle of this scandal, posing with Poilievre, getting excited. It seems like we're up for round 2. I'm thinking they're going to upgrade. The Greenbelt didn't work, but when you're doing powerlifting, sometimes you miss a lift. What do? Next lift as planned. I'm thinking we start developing national parks.
So
in a
actually,
much bigger way coming up next.
Poilievre has confirmed that he's interested in selling 15% of government land. So, like, you're actually not the furthest off. That could very much.
It was a joke.
Listen, all I'm saying is,
I didn't look that up.
Okay, here's some financial advice, and I'm a qualified legal financial advisor, so you're
Yeah.
I think we're allowed to say that.
You can take this advice.
You can take this and run with it. Watch the market, see if Mr. X or Doug Ford or Mr. Mutton or whatever are queuing up to buy just random patches of federal land, and then see if you can get in on that. Because that's where the development's going to be, if that is the case.
I have a feeling if you're not already in, it might be too late for... Oh, wait, you're just saying in general. Yeah, I see what you mean now. You don't need the meetings, right. You just have to know their investment portfolio. It's like...
yeah, exactly.
I think this is...
it's not technically insider trading.
Called the Pelosi-style investment.
No. Pelosi-style investment is what Mr. Mutton did. This is technically not insider trading because you're only working off insider information someone else has without you seeing.
I'm referring to the people that copy Pelosi and just look at her profile. And everything's posted a day later, and they just do all of her trades exactly a day later.
So then, yeah, that is what I'm advising you do. Get in on the Mutton strategy.
Thinking of strategies, there's a new strategy coming up. We have a new party that's popping off.
I'm just sick, Spencer. I'm just sick of the political polarization in this country, the extremism. It's time we had a party that was neither right nor left, but forward. All right?
Yeah.
And
we're in a country that has 2 parties. I'm thinking we need something right in the middle. Right in the middle.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but Trudeau's gone way too far left for me, right?
Yeah, Trudeau's woke army is battering down my door, but I can't go to Poilievre because
he hates someone.
He sometimes says
saying the N-word
words, and I don't like that.
Yeah, he's saying the N-word. He's saying the N-word in Parliament and stuff, and I cannot abide that either.
Yeah.
So we need the Centrist Party of Canada, Shrey.
What color should we make it, Shrey?
Pardon?
What colors should we make the Centrist Party of Canada? That starts with a C.
Well, I was personally thinking of a combination of red and blue, maybe something like purple, maybe?
That would be crazy. That would go hard.
Right, so what's going on in New Brunswick? Because I think New Brunswick is the nucleus of this story, am I right?
So no, well, it's actually across the country. It has roots with the Franco-Albertan. It has roots with British Columbians. It's all over. There's with the unfortunate collapse of the progressive conservative wing within the Conservative Party back in 2003. There's been a move slowly and surely to create what's called these centered red Tories in Canada in conservatism. Quick history lesson. So Canada is one of the few countries in the world which had a very, very, very powerful red Tory movement Red Tories are people who believe in expanding the government overall, but believe in a more socially conservative way and much slower than, say, some of the other parties, like the Liberals or New Democrats, versus a lot of the usual right-wing parties in the world are looking to be more libertarian. The Red Tories are not libertarian in most of the words. That said, in 2003, the Red Tories officially died, with the Progressive Conservatives being pushed into the Conservative Party of Canada, which had a much more libertarian, much more American-esque Republican bent to it under Stephen Harper. Recently, this was really shown to be the fact when Pierre Poilievre won his leadership race with about 70% of the vote almost of the party, and less than 20% going to the quote-unquote progressive conservative candidates within the party. In retribution, the quote-unquote Red Tories created a new party called the Center. They created a new group called Center Ice Conservatives, whose entire goal is to promote the Center Ice in Canadian politics. And they started a new party called the Canadian Future Party, or the CFP, which is very close to Canadian Fascist Party, but I think that's an accident. The CFP is mainly led by former conservatives who are now who are lamenting the death of the conservative movement or the Red Tory movement. They include people like the former leader of former Premier of British Columbia, Christy Clark. They include people like Rick Peterson, a Franco-British businessman from Alberta, and their new leader, who is Dominic Carty. Now, all jokes aside, I have a lot of time for Dominic Carty. I really like that man. He was formerly the leader of the NDP back in New Brunswick before he famously jumped ship and became a conservative Minister of Education in New Brunswick, before he resigned as Minister of Education in anger and released a really angry statement against the Premier, saying that the Premier kept yelling at workers and saying data is my ass to workers instead of actually doing proper policy.
That's awesome.
He's a really cool guy, personally. He was the one who's the main reason New Brunswick survived COVID, or at least in the beginning of COVID, because when he was on vacation, he was looking at COVID reports and was like, wait a second, this looks like a legitimate, serious threat. We should do something about it. And this was months before COVID became a real thing everywhere else in the world. The Canadian Future Party has released its first couple policies around defense and upping defense like crazy. But they haven't really released much apart from that, and are looking for people to contribute on the policy front. So if you're interested, they are accepting policies through their framework.
Could we hijack the party? Is that like a possibility? Or are they gonna like veto stuff we try to do?
Depends on how many people we can bring in and how fast.
3 at least.
This might be a golden opportunity to create a third Communist Party of Canada to compete with the other two.
Yeah, I want to do the Communist Party of Canada, CPC.
Something like that. There's CPC, and then there's like the Maoist one as well. I forget what it's called.
Well, CPC is Conservative Party of Canada as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, we might be able to get people to accidentally fill us in on the ballot.
It is interesting that this is coming out right now. I mean, the country is becoming more and more polarized. I'm sure you guys have noticed it. British Columbia
out there.
British Columbia is a really interesting province where they usually have two parties. They have the NDP and the non-NDP. And until 2021, I want to say, it was the NDP and the Liberals. And there was no real third party. There was like the Greens, and that's it. Mm-hmm. In 2021, I think it was, the first ever Conservative MP was kicked out. And in 2022, the second Liberal MPP were kicked out. And they started their own party called the Conservative Party of British Columbia. Or they just took it over. And now the Conservative Party of British Columbia, with only 2 seats, is polling higher than the former Liberal Party in British Columbia.
God damn.
And so people are getting more and more polarized necessarily. So it is interesting to see this try to come out. I think it'll lead to 0 seats, unfortunately.
I did like...
Yeah, I don't rate their chances highly. I mean, the niche of a centrist party in Canada is already basically filled by the right wing of the Liberal Party.
Or left wing.
3 parties. The Liberal Party is literally the centrist party.
Yeah. Unless you want to really nitpick over policy wonk shit, degree to which we spend on the Navy or whatever, there's really no niche for this party to exist in comfortably. Like, and as you said, polarization is pretty high. So, in a lot of places, it's become like Conservatives versus NDP, like in Ontario and I guess now BC. Even the market for the Liberal Party is not looking so hot right now. I don't understand why they would think this is a good idea.
So the belief is that Canadians generally are progressive conservatives, right? And like historically speaking, Canada's been a pretty centrist country. Like almost every prime minister's fallen underneath that lens. Most the main kind of difference, I guess you could say, between the Liberals and these guys, at least as of now, is stauncher belief in defense, as well as running no deficits kind of thing, like not really going deficits.
On the difference between the Liberals and these guys.
Yeah, and then the opposite side is, from the Conservatives, is that they're more statesman-like.
Okay, I looked at the website, and I noticed that it just looked like the Conservative Party's website. Talks about reckless spending, balancing the budget, and lowering taxes on the first page. And then talks about how... what was it? Yeah. The Conservative Party and other right-wing parties use fear-mongering, anti-minority, and anti-Indigenous rhetoric, where the left-wing parties are against developing our natural resources and have become way too extremist in their approach on social issues. So the words used on the right are wrong, and the actual approach of the left is wrong. So we'll come through, do the same thing as the right, but with nicer words. That's what I got out of this. When I did my initial read through, this just seemed like it was literally a reskin of the Conservative Party while pretending not to be. It was kind of like a...
Well, that's what as Trey pointed out, the nucleus of this is the, I guess, progressive conservatives splitting off from the Conservative Party. So it makes sense that they would echo old PC stuff, because that's basically literally what they are, is old PC guys. But like the PC party died for a reason. There's no reason to really bring it back, even if Trey might be nostalgically attached to it. It's there's just no market for it. I'm sorry.
So I will say, it seems they get just about everything from the Conservatives, as we just said. But one thing that they do, which I think is a mistake, is instead of gunning for being really enthusiastic about their own approaches, they're kind of gunning for just trying to be in the middle of everything and kind of run those polling numbers or something like that. So they do honestly kind of hit that center where they carry probably one of the Liberals' biggest flaws.
Yep. Listen, I'm nostalgic for the era of like a Keynesiast progressive conservatives who are like hyper focused on one thing and one thing only.
Was the PC party really Keynesian, like post oil crisis? Like pre-oil crisis, even Nixon was a Keynesian. He famously said we're all Keynesians now in 1970. So, but like that didn't hold up for the Republican Party long term. Did that hold up for the PCs after that?
It lasted for a little bit. Like it lasted until the Mulroney era. So, like Bill Davis, for example, he was premier, I believe, until '84, if I remember correctly, and he was a staunch Keynesiast himself. I mean, most of the reasons why we go to school or universities or colleges is because of that guy, because he kept just hyper focusing on investing into education. Mm-hmm. After the Mulroney era hit, everything shifted. Mulroney and Chrétien brought about the neoliberal era into Canada, and that's also when the PC movement more or less started to die.
Well, I honestly, with there being a fancy new party, they do have a large grid of actual policy that I would like to get into. So honestly, I think we can leave this one off here, and we'll revisit it once I am done this current spree at work, and we'll do a full party breakdown for you guys, just to see how interested you are in this new centrist conservative party. I imagine our fan base is thrilled about all the prospects.
For what it's worth, something to note is that a lot of conservatives do consider the Ford government as a progressive conservative movement, just to the hyper fixation on transport spending, and then the surprisingly strong union policies.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
it could end up like that type of progressive conservative as well.
But the thing is, we already have this allegedly PC government without the need for this.
Well, no.
Don't worry your pretty little
That's
head
provincial.
about it.
That's not federal, though, right? Federally, it's just Pierre Poilievre.
Okay, but like Pierre Poilievre is not going to be in charge of the party forever. That's like there could be a Doug Ford administration in 15 years. You know, you never know. I just don't see that. I just don't think this party should exist. I understand the frustration with having people in your party you don't agree with being in charge at the moment, but this just doesn't need to exist.
Anyone whose identity is purely made up of not quite being two different things is just fundamentally already in a crisis. Is my opinion.
Yeah.
Politically speaking, you've shot yourself in both knees.
All right. Should we move on to international news?
Oh yeah. We got some baddies coming up.
We got some juicy stories for you folks. This has kind of been a slow week, I guess, in international news worth covering, but
someone is going to send us an email with like 800 different extremely important news stories now, but
listen,
anyways, keep going.
We don't check the email, so it doesn't matter. So the Miss Universe pageant is a global competition for who the most talented and beautiful woman in the world is. The way it works is countries nominate a representative who then goes to represent the country's women at this event. This year's Miss Universe is in El Salvador. They occur once a year every year. Zimbabwe is a country in central southern Africa between Zambia, Mozambique, Botswana, and Angola. And they have had some rough years, I guess. They're coming on the up and up now, but they have, due to a variety of factors, including extreme poverty, internal instability, Zimbabwe has not sent a representative to Miss Universe in 22 years. So this is the first time they are sending someone since 2001.
This is a comeback story.
Yeah, so Zimbabwe is, I guess, a pageant scene has been pretty enthusiastic about this. I looked up Zimbabwean news on this story. Most news stories were like very happy about this. They're like, we have a Miss Universe representative, everyone. Look who it is. And they're like, oh yeah, this and this Zimbabwean reality TV star was a judge at the Miss Universe contest and all that. So internally, Zimbabweans are mostly just proud that they're sending a representative. The issue is that the representative Zimbabwe has decided to send is a white woman. Those familiar with basic human geography probably understand why this surprised foreigners. Zimbabwe is 98% black. And this woman was the only white contestant. Zimbabwe is a population that is 2% white. It is a tiny minority of the country. So Americans, upon hearing the news that Zimbabwe, an African country, was sending a white woman to Miss Universe, were up in arms. If you look up Miss Universe Zimbabwe, you'll see a ton of American news outlets with headlines about how angry people are, people in quotes, at Zimbabwe for doing Miss Universe. And by people, they don't mean Zimbabweans are upset that this woman is being sent. What they mean is Americans are upset that a foreign country dares to send someone to this competition that they didn't want them to send.
Now,
that's the crux of it.
Here's a quick follow-up to this. When I was reading, okay, this is just a short callback, the whole India controversy, all I could think of in my head was, you are not immune to being psyoped. Do you think we're being psyoped? No one's angry, but the media just needs an outrage cycle to rally people to...
I'm honestly literally convinced that's the case.
Yeah.
Because the American news articles I read, like Yahoo and shit, they had people upset. Like, they were quoting people, but it was people on Twitter that were like, by and large, Americans. Mostly black Americans, many white
on Twitter
Americans.
if you look.
Yeah. Yeah, this is like totally manufactured, and also what outrage does exist is not from Zimbabweans. Yeah. You can like Zimbabwe is not like upset by this woman being sent. Americans are on their behalf. It should be noted that the representative herself, her name is Brooke Jackson.
Brooke squared?
No, like
Brooke.
Spelled differently.
It's spelled like this.
Okay.
She posted on Instagram when she won how proud she is to represent her country. She considers herself Zimbabwean, not like English, which is her background, I guess. She fluently speaks Shona, which is the indigenous language of Zimbabwe, as like her primary language, apparently. So she is more Zimbabwean than many of the people complaining about this. Yeah. She's definitely a real Zimbabwean. And it's not like countries don't send visible minorities to this competition regularly. The UK and Ireland notably have sent multiple non-white people to Miss Universe. It's like totally normal for countries to do this. It's completely manufactured nonsense, this whole story.
Now, do we have any numbers on Miss Universe in general? Because I remember hearing about it, like, it was a bigger thing back in the day, I know. I remember hearing about it when I would follow bodybuilding actively, and Miss Universe was kind of just like an offshoot kind of thing where it's just generally a pageant type thing. So it would be mentioned briefly. But is Miss Universe a big thing? Is it a big thing in the global south, or is it just like, am I just completely out of the loop?
Well, the budget is $100 million for the competition, like the actual international competition. This is like a pretty, like, I wouldn't say I care about Miss Universe. I'm not like sitting down on the TV to watch it, but it is like a major, I guess, competition internationally. And third world countries regularly enter and win. In 2022, the United States won. 2021, India won. 2020, Mexico. 2019, South Africa. 2018, the Philippines. So It's like the global south participates actively in Miss Universe. I don't know how popular it is, but it is definitely a major international competition.
And I gotta say, looking at these pictures,
now, no hate to Brooke.
I have no idea. I can't trust anything after AI, man.
You think these are fake pictures?
I don't think they're fake pictures, but I think the fact that I couldn't really tell you for sure at least says something.
So before we get into that entire rabbit hole of AI beauty, which is a huge thing, I did want to comment that growing up, like, my parents grew up in the third world, right? Mm-hmm. And so they would always like excitedly say or let me know when a Miss Universe or Miss World, or I think there's another competition which is big, Miss Supernatural or National or something like that. Regardless, the big Miss beauty pageants. When they were South Asian, they would tell me very excitedly, because a lot of the folks in New World still consider white as like the epitome of beauty. And so a lot of third world countries get very excited when, quote unquote, one of theirs gets it to the top. Mm-hmm. And so it is still like a very, very big deal, especially outside of the Western world.
And I guess that could be kind of, for the people / Twitter users, I'm not sure if I'd call them people, that are angry about this. I guess that's probably their angle. It's just like, okay, the whiter it is, the more beautiful it is. But at this level, I think you're getting a whole lineup of,
What really infuriates me about this story in particular is the fact that it's set in Zimbabwe. So, people might not be aware of this. From 1965 to 1975, Zimbabwe was a Heron folk democracy which is like a form of democracy where only white people can vote. Like, it was a brutally stratified, like, segregationist on the level of apartheid South Africa state. Like, it was, and then when that state collapsed, there was the government of Robert Mugabe who and backlash against whites in the country. There's been a lot of decades of racial conflict in Zimbabwe, and it's cooled off recently, especially since the death of Mugabe. It's cooled off there, and the fact that, like, in Zimbabwe, a white woman wins Miss Universe uncontroversially, and black people in the country are like celebrating that they're sending someone to Miss Universe should be a sign of Zimbabwe's incredible progress since the fall of the apartheid regime. Instead, Americans who probably know nothing about the history of Zimbabwe are just complaining about it.
Look, if we're expecting anyone to know history, no one's there. No one's there.
Yeah, I don't think that Americans or anyone from outside Zimbabwe should have a word on this, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think it's such an internal matter.
Yeah.
A Zimbabwean is speaking, listen and learn.
Yeah. That's the thing. This is like, Zimbabwe can send whoever they want to Miss Universe. Yeah. That's the crux of this issue. Anyways, kind of a non-story. Yeah. More significant international news, Las Vegas cyber attack. So, MGM, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, formerly a major film company, now a casino company in Las Vegas, was hacked last week. I think hacked here should be in scare quotes, because what happened was a hacker group called Alpha V called MGM on the phone. Like, they just called MGM, the IT department, and convinced a random person there to let them into the computer system, and then they walked out with the personal information on MGM's customers, which includes not just people who go to the casino and stay at the casino, but also people who use MGM's incredibly popular sports betting app. Millions of identities have been compromised here. Driver's license, social security numbers, names, even addresses. MGM claims that no customer's payment card info was taken, but a lot of personal information was. MGM was running a lot of cover on this. They accused the hacker group that did this of being hacktivists for some reason, although they didn't say what cause this was for. The hacker group themselves say it was literally just a financial crime. They just want to make money off of it. There's been a lot. The Nevada Gaming Commission is investigating MGM for their failure to stop this, because this is kind of like, an egregious data leak that they have caused through negligence, basically. I guess, like, in defense of MGM here, social engineering attacks are, like, legitimately the hardest cybersecurity thing to avoid, right? Because it's like, you need to actually convince all your really shitty boomer IT employees to just not click on phishing emails and not, like, listen to people on the phone and stuff like that, which they just seem incapable of learning how to do, as evidenced by how many social engineering attacks happen all the time.
Well, I think, too, social engineering is, like, it is truly extremely difficult, even if you're someone who is incredibly skilled, knows all the scams that are coming your way or something. When it comes to globally or whatever, at any scale, there was always going to be one employee who is exhausted, absolutely going through it, and, like, just having a really rough day, who happens to be more vulnerable because of that. And when that happens enough times, one is eventually going to get through just by numbers, and they might realize it, like, 10 seconds later or whatever, something like that always happens. But social engineering will always be around, because it just works. As long as people are involved in any process, which they, will be for at least the foreseeable future, social engineering is going to exist, and it is like attacks are going to get through.
Yeah, this is a pretty egregious attack, though, because it's like millions of people are affected by this data leak. This is like people who MGM is already like exploiting through their system of like enrichment off of gambling. Yeah. They have now lost their personal information to these hackers.
How much personal information
not a good
are people
look for
putting
them.
into sports betting apps?
Well, so because of like age verification requirements, you need to give them your name, like where you live, like a photo of your driver's license. In some jurisdictions, you need to give like the equivalent of the social security number or social insurance number to them. So there's like a lot of identifying information they have to store.
All right. Well, it appears that we're about out.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Yep.
And until the next episode, have a good time.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.